Hello, and we're back. Good evening. This is Ramon, bold like a leopard. Two Ohio guys here today. I have Joshua Seidel back.
Hello.
I think we spoke at the end of August concerning Charlottesville. Programming note, this Sunday I may have the next Testigo Venezuela interview with a new guest who is not even in the United States. He's in Spain, and he might actually enlighten us a little about the Catalonia situation, which suddenly, funny how it is, America, we discover the most fascinating stories after they occur without actually having any foresight. Doesn't that say something about us? I think so. But Josh is here today. Um, we've had obviously a traumatic day watching these images. I didn't get to know about it
Yeah.
till this morning. I don't watch
Yeah.
TV. So I've just been seeing like rumors and like bull
Yeah,
crap
it's scary.
from people, and it's like, guys, let's have I think patience is a virtue in this situation, because then you don't say things you don't regret. So
Yeah,
um,
that's
how
for sure.
about first of all, let's introduce you. You are Joshua Seidel. You have Jewish Right. You're on the Forward. It's
Yeah.
a publication mostly known for progressive Jewish views. How is the atmosphere there right now? Or I know you don't work there literally, but how is the
Right.
atmosphere interacting with the people from that universe?
That's a good question. That's a really good question because it is, and that's a good way to say it too. That universe, because it is a different universe than the one that we inhabit, by far. And they the one here's an awesome thing about the Jewish community is that a lot of communities talk about being open, and we actually are. Jewish liberals, at least, as intolerant as liberals are toward pretty much everything, Jewish liberals' minds are at least open to, I guess, to some extent, to right-wing Jews. And they have given me an honest voice. I mean, I don't like the way they've labeled me sometimes. I mean, keep in mind that they're the ones that pick the titles for my articles. And sometimes I don't like the titles as much. And, they sort of will edit some things or present it in a way that sometimes I'm like, that's not exactly the way I would have presented it. But, that's a minor complaint, given the fact that they're giving me a voice that I don't think that group of liberals would have given to any other person like myself. So I give them credit for that. But they're stuck in this liberal bubble thing, and there's a million layers to it, and especially if you are in the Jewish liberal, like literal Jewish liberal media bubble, that's like, again, several bubbles inside of several bubbles. And I think it would be a very myopic viewpoint, but they do make an honest effort to kind of take a look at what else is out there. I don't know how much they actually listen. I get some honest engagement with some of the people there. I don't want to name names and embarrass them, but sometimes I get people that'll, Josh, you've got an interesting viewpoint. What do you think about this? And I can tell they're kind of thinking things over, but at the same time, I don't know if I could ever break into that bubble really, in any really meaningful way. But they have given me a voice. I'll give them that.
Well, I think it's a huge issue now that there's some journalists, and there was the one from the Huffington Post who last month she did the headlines when Steve Bannon left the
Oh,
White
they have.
House. That was for me. I hit a wall. I don't know if that was before or after we spoke.
Yeah,
Um,
that
I
was
was
after. It was
ready
after.
to punch a wall. The
Yeah,
the
that's a
the
good.
the depth of idiocy to put a headline like that and then to complain about anti-Semitic expressions. Well, you've provoked people to interact, to react in all sorts of ways. Even liberals were saying, "What the hell was that?"
Right.
Um,
Yeah, what are you doing?
so kind of my approach has been, since I've been doing just personal interaction interviews, which I'm not a journalist. I have a 9 to 5 job. I think you have a 9 to 5 job too. I'm I just
Right.
wrapped up an interview right before I started talking to you with Ben Boyce from Evergreen College. By the way, if anybody
Oh,
wants to, you guys should all check it out. great interaction, a liberal person, one of the rare liberals left that, wants to state his case and talk about really why there has to be an open society and open freedom of expression. And it was a type of interaction that's increasingly rare today.
Yeah.
What do you think? I'm going to be posing a scenario, so I might be confirming your bias too. But do you
Right.
do you think some of these people that this David Brooks at the New York Times, who is a a nominal conservative,
Yeah.
this Paul Krugman, you have a lot of Joey Behar, a
Yeah.
lot of these people that are in the Jewish media. Do you think that they've it's not just a bubble in my mind. I think it's a cloister. They've kind of
Yeah.
created a castle, and everybody that's out on the outside, they perceive as attacking that castle.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
well, how do you think that we can, if we can, influence those people to realize, you're not the center of the universe. People have a right to disagree with you.
It has to be presented as, look, either you accept that you're part of a pluralistic society or you lose as part of a, some kind of authoritarian society. How well do pampered liberals do in any authoritarian society that has ever existed pretty much in the history of the human race? They never do very well. And yet sometimes they're the ones whose inaction or just sheer intransigence are the sort of usher it in. I don't know. I mean, you have to come at them in an intellectual manner. It can't be internet trolling. And I think that's one of the things that's really, you call it a cloistered castle, and you're right. There's a drawbridge there. There's walls up, and a lot of it is just because of the way we're communicating with each other. We have to get back to the boring, rational, intellectual communication where we, make the effort to consider each other's arguments. We have to start with respect, the basic respect that, look, someone that has worked their way to the top of the media profession, or someone that has a regular 9-to-5 job and is interested in politics and capable of expressing themselves well. These are people that are reasonable people at heart. And so we should be able to communicate with each other in some kind of a reasonable way. I think we have to start there. Just with the very, very basic fundamentals of communication. Heighten the discourse. Bring back real highbrow discourse. No meme, internet stuff. And that's the way to start reaching out to them, because otherwise we're just not going to respond to each other in any positive way. And especially liberals, because liberals have a lot of defense mechanisms that typically revolve around, hey, the person I'm arguing with isn't as educated as I am. And to get around that, you just have to be intelligent. You have to come up to their level, as much as you might not want to do it, as much as you might want to be a troll, which, believe me, I do. We just have to be mature and have that mature conversation. Liberals will listen, and especially liberal Jews will listen to other Jews. I've seen it happen. I've talked to them. It can happen, but it has to be a mature conversation.
Well, I've had it happen too, and I mean, there's an experience that I went through recently where one of my conservative friends, the Spider, I call him, we were at a Gemara class. For those of you that are not Jewish, the Gemara is a code of Jewish law that you learn. So we were learning it, and he happened to, like an idiot, bring up politics to the person next to him, who happened to be not the most stable person and a die-in-the-wool liberal, and possibly more to the left than liberal. And I got into a shouting match with him, and I said something very, I thought, that, I mean, given the fact that this was a person who's not stable, I can understand he didn't understand it. But I said, 5 million Ukrainians murdered by Stalin. Don't you think that's really a problem? And then I continued with, the Cambodians and the Chinese, and he said, hold up. Those 5 million Ukrainians, they were probably anti-Semites. And I said, that's not the point. That's not the point. I mean, we're not talking about this was, I wrote a piece about it in the Israel Times of Israel, if you want to read it, but in the blog section. Not that I'm not like you, that I have the forward, like, actually distributed it. but the thing is that I think that there is this myopia within the Jewish community sometimes, and I had an argument with a Jewish liberal a while ago, and I did get some traction with him, but it went kind of like this. There was the same thing happened this week with Dave Rubin and not Jerry Lewis. What's the guy's name? Richard Lewis, the comedian that's on Curb.
Yeah.
And Dave Rubin, if you know his show, is kind of somebody who's left the political left and he's become kind of a free agent or something, and he was asking Richard Lewis, what's the whole deal with your politics and whatever, and he's like, well, when we were kids, I was asking my dad or no, my mom, how we do this whole voting thing, and she just whispered to me, we vote Democrats. We vote, because we're Jews.
Yeah.
And then, and then he repeated like the same thing like a few times, and talked about how he was on the Clinton Gore campaign and everything. Yeah. Do you see the same thing with people that they're just so used to voting for the party? And I have people in my family like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, to me, it drives me insane. My point of view is this: if you're going to vote, if you're going to choose the same thing every time, then don't even go out to eat. There's no point in going out to. I would consider not voting Republican next year.
Oh, absolutely.
I just wouldn't vote Democrat. I'd probably vote for Kermit the Frog or something.
Right. No, I mean, here's the thing: Jews make great Democrats. I mean, Jews just make Democrats. If you can appeal to the Jewish community as a Democrat, that's a lot of people that actually are going to show up and vote. That's people that are actually going to engage with the issues. That's people that are actually going to donate to the campaign. So Jews make excellent party members. We always have, and for better or for worse. And of course, it's almost. I mean, you look at and I hate to complain about this again. I know I complain about this too much, but look at the connection between Reform Judaism, the Democratic Party, any kind of liberal social organizations that you see that are very Jew heavy, on the coasts. It's all just a big community. I think it becomes like it becomes not just something that gets passed down from generation to generation, but it becomes like a social life. It becomes your economic life. It can become the way you get a job. I mean, it's everything. I mean, almost more than any other people, we're very well placed to let politics really infiltrate our community and become that well entrenched, because we already have those tight connections there to begin with. And so I mean, it becomes something that gets passed down, like everything else. It takes on more and more significance, and it becomes Democrat. We vote Democrat because we're Jews, and that's actually what we're supposed to do religiously. It becomes conflated with the religion. But it's very, very strong. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it has to be something that they reflect on from time to time. Okay, is the Democratic Party really doing the things that I want them to do, or is this just my social life? Take a look at what the Democratic Party's actually doing. Especially at the state and local level. Take a look at some of what's going on there, because that some of that stuff I think is where we can start making inroads, because there's some genuine anti-Israel and even sometimes anti-Semitic sentiment that comes up in Democratic primaries. You can see that in New York City and California sometimes. You see that the occasional anti-Semitic, openly anti-Semitic candidate that actually does pretty well. And that's something that happens in the Democratic Party much more often than the Republican Party. And so that's where you can start to make inroads. You just have to start getting some reflection. But again, we're fighting. I mean, all of my friends are Democrats, right? Everyone down at Temple is a Democrat. When you're fighting that, I don't know where to begin. I mean, I can't show up, hey, I'm Josh Seidel, so come over with me and leave your entire life behind. I mean, I don't know how to start. I don't know what to do.
Well, my whole problem has been that I had an argument last year with two cousins. One of them, from my region of the country. He's from upstate New York in his case. I'm from Ohio, and the other one, she's moved away since for a a long time ago. They're two cousins, and one of them was for defending Obamacare, huge Clinton supporter. The other one, the other cousin, had abandoned the Democrats, and the reason I think he abandoned the Democrats was because for some of these Jews, until you get literally clubbed over the head with the results of their policies, you really think it's like, it's fresh, nice stuff. Oh, we're the Democrats. We help people. We help people do shit. That's their whole attitude. And this guy, he'd suffered from the Obamacare because he'd been going through a divorce, and high premiums. And I didn't have to make the case to him that this is a policy that is harmful for working individuals and families. It's really something that it took me a long time to realize why it was, but for him, it didn't really. He learned it from experience. I learned it from having to do research. And then the other cousin, she was completely oblivious to it because, to be honest with you, she doesn't live in the sort of existential threat. She's married.
Yeah.
She has a husband that he does get health benefits, or did at the time, and she did have a kid with a pre-existing condition. But you can't get people to understand problems on the macro when they're only looking for solutions on the micro, and it's a huge problem. Doesn't matter. I think it transcends communities. I can't go to people that are living in public housing and say, hey, they're basically putting you in a prison, and they're like, well, it's either the prison or I live in the woods. It's it's a hard choice for. That's why I don't believe in guilting people off of Medicaid. I don't believe in guilting people. You have to convince them to pursue goals in life and not to degrade what they're doing now. So yeah, that's kind of the situation I find myself in, and I was thumbing through, or this is the internet, so I was kind of scrolling through your article on the forward. I'm a Jew and I'm a member of the alt-right. Now, how would you have phrased that title?
So my original title, and this originally went up on my on my page on the Jewish Right, was, I think it was on the inside, or on the outside looking in, or on the inside looking out, something like that. A Jew among the alt-right, which I think was a much more accurate way to say it. I'm certainly not a member of the alt-right.
Okay.
And I don't know who would be a member, quote unquote, of the alt-right. Maybe Richard Spencer could call himself that, but that certainly isn't. And the article, I think, is a lot more clear about where I'm really coming from, which is, look, first of all, it's directed at the Jewish community. It's not directed at the non-Jewish alt-right. And the real point is, hey, take a closer look at what's going on the left. Take a closer look at the real effects of what you're supporting, and kind of take a closer look at where we are as a people in relation to the people around us. We're not we're not the champion of the oppressed. At least that's not how they see it necessarily. The non-Jewish left sees us as white. And as you made there were two words you said that are perfect: existential threat. Those are great words, because I think this is what separates the mind of like an Israeli Jew from that of a lot of us here in the diaspora, particularly in the United States. There's no existential threat. And so you can sit there and say, hey, we're one with the oppressed. Us, you can be there in the upper, or somewhere in Columbia University and say, hey, I'm in solidarity with the oppressed, and it's those evil white people. They're the bad guys, right? And you can pretend like that's actual reality because you don't really have any real existential threat. And my kind of point is, hey guys, we need to start taking a look ahead of things. If we really want this identity politics to continue, if we really want America to split up by race, where does that leave Jewish people? Honestly, where does that leave Jewish people? Are we really in solidarity with people of color? Do they really see it that way? If we want to break down things by tribe, what tribe are we really? And I would argue that, hey, we've only really got ourselves, and in that case, we have to take a more objective look at what's going on. And what I would say my real argument is, look, we shouldn't be supporting identity politics at all, other than our own. In Israel and in America, we should support, the ideals of the founding fathers of this country, who, for whatever faults they had, understood how to set up a country without the kind of racial and religious constant strife that we so many people seem to be thinking is a great idea right now. I guess if I had to say I had an overarching point, that's my point. And these identity politic attacks on white people are absolutely the wrong direction.
Yeah, I'd say that I agree with you. You pretty much summed up a lot of what I think. I'd only add that because I've been observing, for example, one of the most important politicians I think for any country in the modern age, doesn't, and in his case he's British, is Nigel Farage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think if you're a German person, or if you're I don't know, Ugandan, you should look at this person who said, I don't want my country to be just turned into some sort of landmark on the European road to uniformity. I want to keep British sovereignty and direct democracy. And I think that's something that transcends the British people. It's something that I think it's transformed me. I think Jewish nationalism is an okay thing, but I don't really, it's not really the way I think of my Jewish identity. I think of it more as a religious identity. That's me personally.
Yeah.
But the idea of sovereignty, the idea that each nation should have the right to determine its own laws and its society and its language and everything, I think that he's reminded us of where that is, and it's tragic that we have this whole thing where everything is left versus right, where you don't look below the surface to kind of analyze the economics of each person, the some of maybe some of their social, religious values, and I think that we've really lost that because of this whore media that we have. That they don't care about really anything that's below this identity line. So
yeah, that's exactly.
With that, let's talk about the Jewish clergy. That I personally, I go to an Orthodox congregation. I do know a few people. My brother, for example, is conservative, and I know a few Reform Jews. Do you think, given the atmosphere now, that we have to really think about what the separation of church and state really means? Because when the right goes, and we have a lot of these evangelicals trying to tie the values of the right to Christianity, and then on the other hand, you have some of these wackos and like the Jesse Jacksons who try to tie it to tie Christianity to the values of the left. And then you have the same thing in Judaism. Do you think it's kind of like, maybe don't use this as your shield?
Of course, absolutely. 100%, absolutely. Shout it from the rooftops. It kills me how short-sighted these people are. And again, it's so difficult when somebody gets the idea that, okay, political beliefs, the right beliefs, but they're somehow divinely inspired, right? God told me to be a Democrat. I don't understand, especially of all communities, our community wouldn't understand the obvious danger of tying religion to politics that strongly and breaking down that barrier between church and state in the United States, which has been so successful. There's been more violence between Catholics and Protestants in the United States than against Jewish people over the history of this country. It has been so successful. Especially for us, and to want to break that down, because that's exactly what they're doing. And again, it's something where you have to reach out to them with elevated discourse. You have to paint the historical picture. Look, I understand that you think that Torah says you're supposed to vote Democrat. I get it. I mean, I'm not, obviously we have to be not come at them insulting like that. But okay, I understand your commitment to social justice. Okay, I understand what you think that means and why you think the Democratic Party is the better way to pursue that. Fine, but argument about the Democratic Party outside of synagogue. In synagogue, hey, if you want to talk about social justice. Of it. Okay, so what is the essence of it? Okay, so you like giving to the poor, you like helping the disadvantaged. Okay, talk about that. Talk about there's plenty in Isaiah about I'm sure you can find plenty about helping the oppressed, helping the poor. That's all perfectly biblical, and you can find plenty to tie that to genuine Jewish doctrine. Just don't take that extra step and say Democrat or Trump or start tying it in that way. Keep it to the human issues and relate it directly to the biblical text. And again, paint the picture as to why that's important. First of all, if you really believe in Judaism, then this shouldn't be a problem for you, right? There shouldn't be anything wrong with sticking close to the text of the religion that you claim supports all these things that you believe, right? So start there, and again, just point out the obvious danger in what they're doing. There's always going to be more of the other side. First of all, if we're Jews in a largely non-Jewish country, and that other side could be religious, it could be political, but when we open the door to religion and politics, especially when we do it, it becomes a real sign that, hey, the Jews are doing it. So now, everyone can start doing it. And that is, again, it's another thing that undermines our position in this country. It undermines our ability to say, hey, treat me as an individual human being. Oh, well, wait a second, you're Jewish, and weren't they preaching politics down at your synagogue? Can I treat you like a Democrat? I mean, this person's saying that Jews are supposed to be Democrats, and they're saying it at your synagogue. Again, it's just another thing that undermines the core, I think, advantage of living in America for a Jewish person. That's that we're treated just like a person.
Right, and I think, and I mean, I don't even know what denomination you're in, but I'm
working on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I sometimes, I was looking at I was like, I don't even know what denomination. I mean, I go to Orthodox synagogues and whatever, and people who are outside the community, they don't realize that there's so many different. It's almost like you go to a paint store and there's so many different shades of just olive green. That's kind of how the spectrum is in Judaism.
Yeah.
And it is in other religions. Let's not pretend that other religions don't have that. But what I was going to say about the Reform Jewish culture is that it really is about culture, and that's why I think that the Democrats are able to create this mascot phenomenon. It's the same thing. It's retarded, but sometimes I hear about these. I see like people they'll have a copy of a Jewish magazine, and there will be like an article about the Jewish love of mahjong, this game that a lot of these older Jewish women play. I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with anything? Or there's and Leonard Cohen, who is transparently a Jewish topic, but I've never really connected with his music. So, but it's a culturally, it's a cultural topic that resonates with a lot of the communities, Jewish communities, and I think that's one of the reasons that the Democrats, that they just happen to know how to market themselves very well to the Jewish community. What would you say about this idea that people are losing their individual capacity to dissent within the Jewish community? They're kind of saying, oh well, I think that Charlottesville has proven that I must conform to these sermons that are being given, drushas, as they say in Hebrew, that are, or I don't even know what they say in a Reformed temple. Do you think that people are consciously tuning out their self, their their self ability to discern what's the correct course of action.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an absolute fact of our times today, and that's not just in our own community. I think again, a lot of these things we talk about, they're things that are problems in every community, and we can talk about analogs in every community. Sometimes it's just sharper in our community. The distinctions are more distilled. The differences are more contrasted. It's sharper. And I think this is a great example of it. But yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that there's a fear of introspection right now. There's a fear of when you feel there, let's take it down to its most fundamental level. When you feel there are predators nearby, when you feel threatened, you want to flock. You want to flock together with your own, because there's safety in numbers. And I think you're seeing that fundamental principle, is being spun out over much larger systems of humanity. And when you say it's cultural, you're absolutely right. That's part of the flocking. Oh, we all go to Starbucks, flock together. We all read this book, oh yeah, Leonard Cohen, if you're Jewish, you can throw out these things, in conversation. Oh yeah, Leonard Cohen, well, you just throw these things out and if you're not sure if someone else is Jewish, right, you play that game, or, you just play the game, hey, we're all in this together, we're all kind of on the same level here. That's what those kind of things do. And now it's so much stronger because there's a feeling that there's predators out there. And we have to, there's safety in numbers and we have to come together. It's definitely a thing. It definitely can be very exclusionary. It can turn very nasty quickly. And I think it definitely affects our community very strongly. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's because culturally I'm more, I don't know if I'm a redneck or I'm some sort of just a Midwestern. I don't know if like Wayne's World resonates more to me than let's say Leonard Cohen. And I don't have anything against Leonard Cohen, honestly. I mean, I just kind of don't get it. But I just really don't get it. And maybe one day off air somebody will explain to me what's the big deal about it. But to me, the response that because I don't jive culturally with the Jewish culture has been if somebody like if somebody of the Joy Behar type was to say, how can you, with all of your heritage, go and support a person like Rand Paul or Donald Trump or James Mattis? I'd say, how can you, knowing the all the stuff about how we're supposed to behave with etiquette, just be a bitch to people on TV all the time like you are, Joy Behar? It's unbelievable. And I think people there's this word that I've heard people toss around called Edelkeit in Yiddish, which means refinement, that we're supposed to behave more with manners. And I was like, yeah, this is not what they're doing. It's not, and it's not what I'm doing either. But they're not acting in more refined way. They're acting in a more pretentious way, and it's wrong. I think, unfortunately, like I said, the Richard Lewis interview, hilarious comic. I think it shows that some of these people, they were at one time cutting edge, and then it just got really, really stale.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you nailed it with that Joy Behar comment, that what she would do is come at you with, oh, well, you've got all this, she'll use your Jewishness against you. Oh, you've got all this tradition, therefore, how could you support Rand Paul? Well, the response to that is you have to uncouple those two things. You have to, in their mind, you have to say, well, here's the objective reasons to support Rand Paul, or here's the objective reasons to support Donald Trump, and just get their mind away from trying to connect this all to Judaism and being Jewish. And the thing is, maybe there is something of a connection there, but honestly, they're so nuts right now, the liberals are, that I just would rather they didn't think about that at all, and just try to focus more objectively on politics, and then try to fix their the rest of that at some other point. But yeah, I mean, again, it's all about flocking together. It's all about it's kind of the bush. And you said something else that I resonates with me when you said you're kind of confused about what's your cultural identity, and I'm right there with you. I mean, I'm part redneck, I'm part highbrow Jew, I'm part art film lover. I mean, I like country music. I mean, it's I'm all over the place because I've lived a life that's been all over the place, and I like that about myself, and a lot of people like that about me. But the problem is in these times when okay, everyone gather around with the flock. Well, I'm not really in a flock. I'm kind of I like to fly between flocks, and
or maybe
I'm
your
realizing.
flock. I think flocks overlap. I have friends who are
Yeah,
both
right.
Jewish and non-Jewish that like reggae, that like marijuana. I don't smoke marijuana, for the record, but I have friends who
Yeah.
it's the thing. I mean, America, it's been so great to Jews because, and it's also been deficient in some ways because it gives choices. Whereas I know people that they're nostalgic about the old country, and they're saying, oh, I want to go back to Ukraine, see where my ancestors came from, and there's something to it. And I always say to them, your ancestors suffered there immeasurably from horrible neighbors who didn't like them. And you can go there, but don't pretend that it was some sort of like idyllic existence. It was an awful place. Especially in Eastern Europe. It was probably the worst repression. People talk about the Holocaust, but Eastern Europe was pretty bad. What do you say about your experience? We were saying off air. You're kind of saying now, yeah, this politics, I'm kind of not feeling it so much. What's kind of gotten you to that place?
Yeah. Well, honestly, everything that we've talked about has gotten me to this place. I'm seeing, again, that we're becoming more and more tribal. And I like that up to a point as a response to the left. We had to kind of come together cohesively to respond to their very cohesive message. But at this point, I wish we could all take a step back from it. And it's just, it's very anti-human. It forces us into categories that we don't really want to be in. And I think that when we take a step back, we realize this. And I've seen it time and time again where people kind of can, again, become decoupled from it for just a little bit of time, or just maybe find a Facebook group where, different kinds of people are in the Facebook group. It just takes a little bit, and they can kind of snap out of it. But that's the thing about America that's been, and the life in America that's been so great for Jewish people, is you can just live as a person. You can just be a concept. You can say, okay, I'm going to be a great salesman, and just go out and be a great salesman. You don't have to really, and again, it's not that you're trying to escape your Jewish identity. It's just that you don't have to be reminded of it by non-Jewish people all the time. Oh, you're a Jew, so this. Oh, you're a Jew, so that. I mean, people don't think about what that would mean. I mean, imagine that. You go to a store, oh, you're a Jew, so this. You walk down the street, oh, you're a Jew, so this. It's just.
I get it at work. I mean, I work with mostly a white and Hispanic workforce, and they're all great guys. But yeah, they'll say, "Oh, sorry, we somebody said today, is your new mortgage kosher?" to somebody else, and they're like, "Oh, sorry about that." And it's like,
Yeah.
and it's like, I don't care. I've been called
Right.
because I was in college.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about something a lot more, substantial than just a few. Yeah, sure.
Well,
but I mean, I'm talking about like the legal system starts taking into account and things like that, or it's to the point where you can't, you have to, back in the old country, people talk about that, the threat of assimilation. And wasn't it better because people didn't assimilate? Yeah, the reason people didn't assimilate is because they'd get their head chopped off. They'd be tortured to death if they stepped outside the wrong spot. I mean, we don't want to go back to that. I think it's great that Israel, we have the Jewish state. That's where, if you want to really live a Jewish identity, you can do it there. You can also do it here in the America, in a cloistered community. And that's wonderful that America can allow that. But all of that will break down. All of that will fall if politics takes over. If this tribal politics takes over, that removes our ability to kind of, hey, we're just people, right? No. You're the Jews, and that means this, or it means that, or that. And we can argue about, well, which side is worth, the right or the left, which side is worse, the right or the left. which side has more power. I mean, my argument has been the left right now has a lot more power. You know, they have a lot more institutional power. They're doing a lot better. And so they're kind of the bigger threat that needs focus. But obviously, there are people on the right that are a problem as well. And if we don't take a step back from the importance that politics has in our lives, one or other of those sides is going to win. And that's not going to be good for us either way. You know, it's just a matter of it's a matter of remembering that the connections we have to other people are more important than any political issue. You know, the connections in our own community, it has to transcend politics. You know, and that's something that I think is great about the Forward. You know, the fact that they'll publish me, that they talk to me. Hey, that's great. I'm 100% for that. I try to have good relations with them for that reason. Just to keep that human connection open and remember that as much as I disagree with these people, they are other Jews and they are people, and that's more important than any political disagreement we could have. You know, I don't want politics to invade my home. I don't want politics to invade my bedroom. You know, at least not. You know, I mean, obviously, I'm not a libertine. I don't mean that, but you know, we have to think before we let politics take over our life. It's bad for our personal mental health, and it's definitely bad, very bad for our community. It's been bad for my personal mental health, and I feel much better now that I'm not as involved in politics. Honestly, it comes down to that.
Right, and then on the level of politics invading other spaces, I mean, there's the whole. I mean, obviously the shooting today where he or last night rather, where he attacked a concert where people are going probably to escape work and politics and a lot of other things. That's one of the more stark expressions of politics, or whatever you want to call it, invading, you know, art spaces. And then there's, you know, this NFL protest has really been kind of a farce to me. And I started to realize that one of the smart moves of this president, Donald Trump, was to pick on a league where there are winners and losers. And as of today, there are a number of teams that are 0-4 in New York, in LA, in San Francisco, and Chicago also has a horrible team, and Miami is in the dumps too. And he's used what I think is so funny, and I'll let you respond to. I don't know if you're an NFL fan, but if I may say, what they don't realize, these players, is that there is no solidarity in the fans' minds between the teams. If you're an Eagles fan, the worst thing you want to do is see your Eagles hugging Giants or Cowboys players and doing the fist together. And the same thing if you're a Ravens and Pittsburgh fans, you know, it's ridiculous. And it's playing out. You know, these teams are getting shellacked. Yeah. And I think that they've really miscalculated everything. And I don't know if Trump really planned it out. I don't care, because I think that they've. I'm not happy about it because I'm a huge Cowboys fan, but at the same time, you know, these teams have deserved it for a long time, and it has nothing to do with politics. They've deserved this ass whooping from the public. What's your perception of this topic, if we can step away from the religion for a few minutes?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just, again, it's just another thing that politics have invaded that aren't welcome there, and it really just wakes a lot of people up to, wait a second, we don't want this crap going on when we're trying to watch a football game. Of course, it's not going to be interpreted well by the fans. They just see a bunch of people disrespecting the national anthem. And, you know, again, the football is one of the, you know, you show up at football, you say the national anthem, you know, it's pro-American, and that's just part of the brand. And a football player, you're as much a part of the brand as the guy working at McDonald's is a part of the brand. And the guy that works at McDonald's can't show up in a Wendy's outfit and say, you know what, I think I'm going to protest today instead of dropping your fries. I mean, you know, I granted that, you know, these guys, I'm not trying to insult them by making that comparison. I mean, it's a job. They belong to an organization, and the brand of that organization has been ruined by this. And, you know, of course, Trump always comes out ahead in these kind of cultural things because he's the guy saying what most of us want to say, and he almost makes it seem like, hey, I'm the guy that's above all this, and look at you idiots down there playing politics when you shouldn't have. So he comes, no matter what the football players say back to him, he comes out ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add a couple elements that I think, you know, the flag thing, I think I look at this more strategically because patriotically, I don't know if all Americans who are against the protest are really patriots or they're, armchair patriots. I don't. It's not really the angle that I'm looking at. But strategically, think about it this way. Um, these cities have just been bled dry by these oligarchs, these football team owners, and the players who get paid a generous salary.
Yeah.
And then, um, on top of that, they just basically piss on the fans by, pretending to have a cause that, to be honest with you, I think 6 or 7 of them really know about. And those guys, I'm not faulting them if they have an opinion. I've said before, yeah, you can have an opinion if you thought well out, but that's 6 or 7 of them. A
Yeah.
lot of these other guys are, kind of being dragged into it.
Yeah. Right.
And you know, like I said, these teams that are in major markets, Los Angeles, New York, um, Philadelphia, although they're doing well, uh, that's kind of hard for me to accept, but they're doing well. So these fans in large markets, the NFL, remember, is the most phony institution in terms of. I'm talking about the league in terms of real values. They really chase after the dollar, and they've moved teams. They've put them in cities in order to get more fans because of demographics or whatever. And
Right.
I'm happy to see that it's backfired on them. They put a team in LA, the city that doesn't, nobody goes to football in LA.
Right.
And, they're getting stadiums where they have to tarp off seats, and, they can hear the Eagles fans like chanting over the not public announcer. So I'm, if there's one thing I'm happy about, it's that this league has been taken down a peg.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel the same way. I've never been a big fan of the NFL as a business. I mean, I love the game of football, but yeah, I mean, they're kind of in a no-win situation here. I mean, politics, it's there's no way for them to win this game. I think what they should have done from the very beginning is say, look, we don't appreciate. I think Goodell should have made a kind of a, hey, we don't appreciate anyone making political statements on our field, and just left it at that and not said another word about it. They definitely shouldn't have let anyone respond to Trump, and they should have just left it at that. But honestly, I don't know. I don't think there's any way out of it for them right now, because this is becoming another front on the quote unquote racial, cultural, political war front, and there's a lot of football fans on either side of that divide. So either way, the NFL loses.
Yeah, and that's why I saw an article earlier by Nate Silver, the former poll guru who thought, oh, I can predict every election. He also said he put together this model showing the demographic political leanings of each team. He was trying to make the point that even if you account for cities like Nashville and Tampa, which are heavily Republican, the majority of fans are from Democratic leaning districts. He misses the entire point, because we're not talking about whether the district leans Democratic. We're talking about whether the fan base has political affiliations, which is pretty different. And also, even if it was disproportionately Democratic, you're talking about marketing to customers. So you're still alienating a significant sector.
Yeah, I mean, what business model out there? Okay, guys, we're gonna start out by pissing off 40% of our potential customer base. Tell me the business that wants to piss off 1% of its potential customer base. I mean, and for no conceivable gain. I'm not, that's not a business model. A lot of these guys are just wishing, guys, they're just hoping that somehow this doesn't hurt the NFL. Because they see conservatives giddily, predicting the NFL's demise. Okay, NFL, you're going to get it, and they just don't want that to happen, because they don't want the other side to be right. And so they're going to whip out any argument they can that somehow this isn't going to hurt the NFL. This has all been a great move by these players to piss off again 40, 50, 60%. I don't care what it is. You're talking about numbers. Yeah, I know your margin of profit is not 40 freaking percent. So what are you going to do without 40% of your fan base? Answer: you're going to have to shrink, and they're probably going to have to shrink. They're probably going to lose some teams.
Yeah, or they're going to have to cut back on contracts and on amenities. And
Sure.
you know, the other thing that I'd say, and I'd add, I think you kind of hinted to this too, is that, I have strong opinions, which is why we're both here, and I have a job. And if I went to the job and I was to say, go up to people with, I've had a few conversations at work. I try not to, but if I was to go up to people and say, listen, I think this whole thing where we're not allowed to smoke marijuana is a bunch of bull crap, and I'm going to sew a marijuana leaf onto, my lanyard, and
Right.
I think that's a statement of my views.
Yeah.
And I don't smoke marijuana, but I think we should be able to smoke marijuana. What's the problem? I think I would be out there so fast.
Right.
I'd be like a blur on the asphalt. Um, Basically, it's like they and that's the way the NFL is. It's not like an average workplace, but the fan does not understand that. The observer does not understand it. Even the journalist thinks that they understand it and that they should be able to convey it to the public, but it'll never make sense because you're trying to you're kind of trying to tell a lizard how a hedgehog lives. It just, they're two different ways of living.
Yeah.
Um, how about, let's go back to this article that I saw where title, and we already covered this topic to a degree, but it says why some rabbis use their high holiday sermons to bash Trump and others demurred. And this guy, he said, one of the rabbis, he said, his Rosh Hashanah sermon last week was on trying to lift ourselves above the dishonesty, the civility, the indecency which so many feel has become the societal norm. One of the remarks of that is indecency, according to Rabbi Davidson, was Trump's response to the August white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. He says, I certainly mentioned the president in certain contexts. I mentioned his response to Charlottesville and condemned it. We have to condemn he says condemn like 50 times in here.
Right. Right.
I think there's more condemnations in this sermon than there is in the actual Bible. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
and then there's other ones that disagree. I mean, your thoughts on actually his specific remarks. I mean, what would
yeah.
you
I mean,
say?
again, if he had kept it at, looking at our interpersonal relations and being more civil, being less, some of the cynicism and sarcasm, yeah, that's excellent. And I think you can find a lot about that and about how, in our, in our texts, about how to properly communicate with others and the importance of civility and treating others with respect in a variety of different ways and contexts. Obviously, that's a big part of any faith, including our own, is, okay, what's the proper way to treat people in certain circumstances? And again, if he had kept it to that, excellent. But then when again, you start bringing in Trump and then the response to Charlottesville, it just, as the more you bring those things in, the more you bring in your own opinion, and you start tying it to these, and Trump's response to Charlottesville. I mean, again, there are many good counter arguments there, but I don't even want to get into that. Even if I agreed with him that Trump's response to Charlottesville wasn't that good, why did you go there? Don't mention that. Stick to the powerful message that you had. Because once you bring up Trump's response to Charlottesville, the people in the pews are saying, okay, well, then you know what? God, I'm not thinking about God anymore. I'm not thinking about how I'm supposed to treat my fellow man. I'm thinking about how angry I am at Trump and how angry I am at Republicans. And hey, here I am with my fellow Democrats. All right, guys, we're going to go out there and get them. That's what it becomes. And so he lost. I think that sermon loses its connection to anything holy. I think it misses its again, there's the possibility of really touching somebody and making them realize, hey, how I treat someone else is part of, how I see God. That's important. And there's something to that. And maybe thinking about that a little more, maybe going home and saying, maybe I'm not so angry at my Trump supporting father because of this great, what I heard at synagogue. But no, the exact opposite is what's going to occur from that sermon, and that's why you can't bring in those things. That you have to keep to the human, and you have to keep to God, or just general examples, just general non-political examples, things that we can all relate to and agree with.
Yeah, I think I went to you know, two different communities, minions as they call them, for Rosh Hashanah and for Yom
Yeah,
Kippur,
yeah. So
and
did I.
they were, or technically I went to three. No, no political
Yeah,
content, and some of these people have political opinions, but
of
they're like
course.
more about, they're more about the scripture, they're more about the laws. I can say that the Iranian rabbi at the what's it called, the Yom Kippur Minyan, was much more focused on the actual message of the holiday, completely oblivious to everything else, um, which I think was good for that day for me.
Yes,
And
especially for Yom Kippur, which is supposed to be a very introspective holiday. It is not supposed to be you sit there talking about Donald Trump. Oh, that drives me nuts. Sorry.
yeah, 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 and I think that this is my um, my perception of somebody like that guy, the guy who's making these comments, is like, when he's talking about dishonesty and civility and decency. When I grew up under President Clinton, one of the reasons I'm such a foul-mouthed, randy thinking person was because Bill Clinton really formed the and I'm not even joking. He was the role model when I was growing up, and we were always, there were jokes, cigar jokes nonstop when I was a kid, all the time. Never had any I mean, here and there were some condemnations, but they weren't repeated, and they weren't like a campaign. And I mean, I think, it wasn't a great result, but I'm able to, I have this whole Clinton library that I made behind me, but I'm still able to acknowledge there were some areas where President Clinton did a good job, and there were a lot of areas where he was really kind of some sort of beast, in the way he behaved towards, the people who worked for him, and he was just this greedy person. But you can get kind of a rounded impression of somebody, appreciate different points of views towards him. And what they're doing here instead is that they are completely demonizing one person.
Yeah.
And I think that's contrary to the view of the Jewish religion and these holidays, and the idea that at least in Hasidic thought, and I'm not Hasidic in practice, but I learned some of it. There's a spark of godliness in everybody, and even in some of the people with more extreme lifestyles than Donald Trump. I mean, Genghis Khan. We,
Right.
we believe in
Right.
that. It's not easy to understand, but it's part of our belief system
Right.
that God permeates all creation.
Yes.
And we don't think of ourselves as righteous and wicked. There's kind of a long continuum in between them,
Right.
sort of like it's a true version of the fictional gender spectrum, which is all that's actually fake. But
Yeah, right. Right. Right.
this, that if they would transfer that type of thinking from gender to virtue, I think that
Yeah.
society
A lot
might
of
be
things.
a little better off. What about, I mean, I think let's wrap up in like 5 minutes if you're okay with that.
Yeah. Sure.
But what do you think steps forward? You said you're taking a little step away from politics, but as a country, we've just experienced another mass shooting. Um,
Yeah. Can't get away from it.
yeah, and these, again, the gun debate, and then the Muslim debate from yesterday, and then everything. Where do you think people should go to really talk about things that they feel, passionate about, have like good opinions about, but they don't want to get into this, this minefield of,
Yeah. I
yeah,
think we have to do it in real life. It can't happen online. I think we have to commit to, if we're gonna have like real political debate, that it doesn't denigrate the way it's been denigrating. It has to happen in real life again. I don't know under what circumstances that's going to happen, but we would have to we have to dedicate ourselves to doing that. I think we have to all kind of see again. It's just those of us that have been on the internet for as long as I have. I make it sound like I've been at war or something like that, but I mean I've been on the
the
internet
meme
since
wars. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I've been on the internet since the internet was when you would connect with did we talk about this last time? Like red boxes and things like that. But I mean, I've been on the internet since the internet was you connected with a pulse style modem when the internet was ASCII. All right, I've been talking about the '80s internet, and I've seen it for years and years and years. I've watched, as it consumes people. And there's been different things over the years, the Chans, and before that it was the IRC, and it just consumes people. And now it's more and more people are using social media, and it's absolutely consuming us. And it's I think why we're reducing life to politics, because on social media you can reduce life to politics. It's all two-dimensional. It's all words. It's not human feeling and emotion. And I think we just have to get away from the internet. I hate to say that, but it's just I don't know if there's another way to do it. Either that, or people like us that have again been on the internet for as long as we have and seen all this. We have to just agree that okay, certain things aren't working, and here's how we make them work better. It's possible that we'll just evolve through this. That this is social stress caused by new technology. And other things, and we'll evolve through it. We'll get through it, and we'll be able to reconnect with each other again. But I think unless there's a more honest engagement with technology, I don't think we'll get a better engagement with politics. And I think until there's a better engagement with politics, things are going to continue to get worse on the cultural and political front. And so when I say taking a step back, excuse me. I don't mean I don't have political beliefs anymore. I just mean I've got to find a way to express them in a different and more effective way, really.
Well, I've found, there's certain things that you said that I totally agree with. That I took a walk in the creek about a week ago, and I was trying to get, some of my, listen to some videos while I was doing it. There was no reception, so I put my headphones away, and I started to really realize I'm in a friggin' creek. That's okay. I mean, it's okay to be in a creek and not have to focus on anything besides the creek. Look at, the rocks over there and whatever, and plantation, and walk around. And, it was a better, I mean, it was actually the experience instead of, just surroundings. Yeah. And then what I started to notice, like I'll find forums where I can call, and, and they do exist where you can call people, and I'll forward you one later, that you can call them up, and they'll give you they'll give you like 5-10 minutes, and they'll respond to you, and they'll be like, and the fact of the matter is, where are they on the political spectrum? They happen to be on the right now. And they're on the internet. The Anthony Logan show, I'll just come on and say it. It's kind of allowed me to become, the type of person that I'm willing to even do videos and interviews like this with people that I don't even know.
Right.
And then the other thing is the people on the left that are they're disconsolate over what's happening on their own side. I think that they have to be supported in terms of of being able to. Yeah. And I was just speaking to one, and this guy's like, well, I've become kind of a targeted figure in my community. This Ben Boyce, and I'm like, you know what? Well, it's important what you're doing, because you have to represent the voice of voice of reason. I don't know if you can. He's the voice of honesty there. Somebody who's really willing to document it and talk about what's really going on in his own experiences. And I think that if we can form kind of this, we're not even calling it a camp. We're kind of calling it I would call it, a new civil society. Then we wouldn't have this type of hatred. And if the media loses those people, then I think that those people have somewhere, they want to go somewhere, and we should start creating it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's about it for today. I want to thank the guest, Josh Seidel. You want to, I mean, you said you're not writing, but you want to promote anything that you're doing, or,
I don't have I don't have any projects to promote at the moment. I mean, I will write again. I can't help myself, honestly. Stop me before I write again. I should scrawl it in lipstick on my mirror for the when the police show up. But it's a compulsion for me in a sense, and I'll certainly continue doing it. But thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and thanks for those of you that did tune in, and I hope you share this video and the video with the two videos with Ben Boyce, because you're all sitting there probably thinking, I go to work and people I either can't say what I want to say, or they would ignore me or report me. So with that in mind, have a great day at work tomorrow. Pull the shutters closed. And I'll talk to you off air, Josh, for a couple minutes, and have a great night, everybody.